Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today's review of the high-grade Perfect Strike Freedom is not actually sponsored because no one outside of like Target in the US has this kit, and even a lot of those don't have the kits yet. So I guess this is sponsored by our Teespring. Go check that out or scroll down to check out some things. But this is such an oddity in Gunpla. Like the US being primarily a secondary market for Gundam in general, doesn't usually get exclusives. Like, even harkening back to like the Mobile Suit in Action days of the early 2000s, we would get stuff like the action figures, but they were usually re-releases of the Japanese figures that already existed with less detailing. So for this to come out in the US first, nearly exclusively, is pretty crazy. Out of all the Battlogue kits, this one actually caught my eye the most. Now, taking a look at actually what we get in the box, it's pretty standard fare. It actually kind of reminds me of the old 00 boxes, since they're kind of more white and they're kind of a crisper aesthetic. But outside of that is pretty standard fare. The art on the front looks pretty standard for a high grade. But generally speaking, I like this design. Probably my favorite design of all of the Battlogue kits. I know it's probably not the most popular opinion, but that's just kind of what I think. We get some information on Battlogue and some of the other stuff. We also get some of the gimmicks. And you pretty much out the gate know the gimmicks of this kit. That's kind of the whole point of this kit existing. And we'll talk about those more in a practical sense in just a moment. But once we open the box, we have two white A plates. They are serviceably fine. We have two black B plates, which are mostly entirely the backpack. We have the C plate, which is red, gray, yellow, and clear. We'll also have two of the red D plates, mostly for backpacks and stuff. We have two of the E plates for all the internal bits. We have the F plate for all of the new parts for the Strike Freedom, or Perfect Strike Freedom. We get the beam effect part from the Infinite Justice, which is quite interesting. We get the PC set, and then we have the stickers and the bendable wire. Plus, of course, the pretty standard looking manual, but it is pretty nice looking. Now, once you get it all put together, it is a very quick build. It's not all that elaborate. It is pretty much a high-grade Cosmic Era suit, so it is pretty solid still, all things considered. But a lot of Seed suits, as you would expect, are kind of live and die by their gimmicks, and the gimmicks don't always translate well into plastic sometimes. Before we get into any of that, though, just surely the looks of this kit actually look really well. I like the way they kind of integrated the whole perfect strike look into the shoulders. I think they might have been able to do it better from a design standpoint, but in terms of plastic, it's serviceable and it works. We do have the kind of strange like beam emitter on the back of the green part for like the launcher pack type situation, just kind of strange. Don't know why that's there, but it's there. You have the claw on the other side, which I think fits much better into the shoulder, but generally speaking, they both look pretty solid and pretty stable. The head does have a slightly different V-fin. The white part is a little bit more angled and cut out. I think that looks pretty good. I honestly kind of like that better. But you do get the regular V-fin if you have a preference of the regular Strike Freedom V-fin. The chest itself has two extra additional fins and is much more of a strike aesthetic than that of the Strike Freedom. So you don't get the big beam emitter in the chest. It's just a pretty solid torso. But I think it looks actually quite a bit better in my opinion. I just like this color scheme. Honestly, if they'd have just given us a Strike Freedom in this color scheme, might have been okay. The legs, there's not much to write home about, honestly. None of the gimmicks really have to do with that, so not a big deal. You do have the little flippy parts in the back, but no thrusters to go in there, so do with that as you will. I do think, however, if you cut out the vents on the top of the feet and the front of the knees, you might be able to fit those Infinite Justice blades in there. I haven't tried it because it is a very small part, but you have them if you decide to try so. Now, the main attraction of this kit is the backpack, and it is a backpack, to be sure. It is huge. This probably weighs as much as the kit, if not quite a bit more, honestly, once it's all put together and everything. All the red bits do come off separately and are the Dragoon system of this unit, but it can stand on its own without any help, which is kind of cool. So if you wanted to have like a secondary unit, you can do that. Don't know why you would, but if you want to, you can. You have the railguns on top, which work fairly well as little extra fins. They're on ball joints, so they move around pretty much all over the place. The wings are on a hinge peg in there, so they swivel all over the place and will swing back and forth in the two directions, whichever direction you have the swivel placed in. The red bits will slide off, so you don't have to worry about those. Then you have just ball joints for the bottom thrusters, and this is the part of the backpack I kind of dislike. I think it is a little too deep, but once again, that's a design situation. The big wings aren't too terribly problematic. They do kind of get in the way, but they have enough movement they can be moved out of the way fairly easily. But the bottom parts, I wish they would have just cut off one side of the thrusters. I feel like it's too big, and it does kind of get in the way sometimes. But I think that's just a personal preference. Visually speaking, it's not been a huge hindrance to me. It's just kind of annoying. But it outside of that honestly works just fine. It's really something you're going to have on a stand anyway, so this isn't like the end of the world. Oddly enough though, these also are long enough that they will stabilize the whole kit once the backpack is on, so you can absolutely do that. So if you decide to do it, you can. If you want to put it on a stand, I think you're all the better for it. Now once we get it on the stand and up in the air, it looks pretty solid. I said those back thrusters, honestly, in the bottom, I think are too big, but personal preference. And this is it's one of those seed kits that kind of goes back to the problem I had with the high grade Blue Frame Astray 2nd L. A lot of the weapons are really cool in theory, but in practice are not nearly as much. Just because they're kind of hard to use. The Dragoons, you're going to have a lot of different stands or something set up, and they don't have 3mm pegs, so you're just going to hope that they slide on to whatever peg you have. Most of them come to a narrow enough point that you can do so, and we'll look at it later, but the big feature of this kit is something you're not really able to use so much, and then the two weapons you're really meant to pose it with are kind of unwieldy in their own way. Now, that being said, the sword and beam rifle combined, they look fine. They're a big sword, though, on a round hilt, so kind of just keep that in mind that it may spin around on you a little bit, but a little bit of glue or polish or even stickers kind of helps add a little friction to it. Now once you have them separated, the sword holds just fine. It is a more rectangular peg, so it holds in the hand. It's very satisfactory. It's not a very heavy piece of plastic, so you're not too concerned with weight issues. The beam rifle, on the other hand, well, it does look cool, and I actually like this design. I wish the handle portion was either not there or a lot shorter, because it is not the easiest thing to get around the arm. You can't get it around the arm, it's just one of those things that's a little bit of an irritating issue when you're trying to get it in a neat pose. You can do it, just kind of keep in mind, and it may bump some things here and there. Probably won't knock them off. It's more likely the gun will fall out of the hand, but it's one of those things, there's a lot going on this kit, so there's a lot to adjust when you're getting it in a pose you like. Now, once we get to the beam emitter on for the shield, it looks pretty solid. The one thing I will say is the actual connection point is slanted, so when you have anything else in that hand, it is kind of bumping into it. I feel like this is a little small, but I do kind of like that. The bigger beam shields tend to be more in the way and something I'm not going to utilize as much, but this feels pretty solid. It doesn't stick out, it's not too heavy, it's not falling off the arm a lot, and it's a nice enough colored blue plastic. I guess it's more of a clear hue, or clear plastic with a blue hue, but it doesn't have any sparkly effects, which is a little disappointing, but I think that's on par with what we got on the Infinite Justice, which I reviewed not long ago. Now, you have weapons all over the place, but if you decide not to use them and utilize the open palm hands, you can do that. You have a beam emitter for the shield arm portion on the sword striker side, if you will, as well as a bendable cable for the little hook thing. It's a pretty cool feature, but it's something that I think is more of a visual neat factor, I guess. It just looks cool. It's not all that practical, and a lot of bendable wire things aren't usually, for Gundams at least, too usable. I mean, it works. It functions fairly fine. It's just something I don't see many people posing it like this. The hook is okay. It's not super detailed. If you wanted to paint it, I think you could get quite a bit out of it. And since the launcher side doesn't move, there's not much going on. Now, once you get the beam, or the Dragoons off of the backpack, they do actually look pretty cool. You can get some pretty neat poses, especially if you have a lot of extra little stands hanging around. Honestly, the little 30-minute mission pegs work just fine. Like I said, they don't peg in, you just kind of have to slide them to the point where there's enough friction. But they work, and those sets are usually fairly inexpensive, so you can get quite a few of them, pop them together, and have a cool all funnels going out at once type thing. And it doesn't look too bad. I honestly think I would just take the ones off the lower bit and keep the ones on the top. I think the big cool red wing thing looks neat, but that's just a personal preference. Overall, this is okay. I think the idea and the ambition were there, but unfortunately the actual execution is not something that was really going to work well. And it's not a bad kit by any means, it's just you're going to need a few extra pieces to fully realize what this kit can do. The sword and the beam rifle look cool and they're very functional, they work fine, and you're not going to be disappointed with them on the display. But if you're getting this for the cool Dragoon thing, you're going to need a lot of extra stands, or some other way to suspend them, whether that's wire or string or whatever it is. That's just something extra you're going to get with this that really any of the other kits from the Battlogue line aren't going to have a problem with, because none of the other ones use a bit weapon, so keep that in mind. But if you're not too concerned about using the Dragoons in a pose and you just want them on the kit because they look cool, it looks cool. It is visually a very cool looking kit. So it's really, honestly, if you're a fan of seed things, I think this is actually a really great partner to the Build Strike. So if you have the high grade Build Strike or the real grade Build Strike, is a nice partner to that. And it displays fairly well. And honestly, if you just put it on a Seed or Seed Destiny shelf, I think it would honestly blend in pretty well as well. But those have been my thoughts in those comments down below. Let me know what you've got question-wise or just your general thoughts. Have you found any of the other Battlogue kits? Have you built them? What has been your experience? As always, friends, I'm the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. Please do your best to stay safe and keep on building.